Good morning. My name is Jason Van Gorder, and I am going to do my TED Talks research presentation here. Um, Pretty neat stuff. I never had, knew what TED Talks was, and there's a lot of good stuff on there. But so the one that I did. Here's my note cards. Three of them are the three fears about screen time and why they are not true by Sara DeWitt. Um, it was from April 2017, but she's now the senior vice president for PBS Kids.org. At that time, she was um, in charge of like overseeing the website and doing more research and stuff. She has had a pretty unique background. Looked at that a little bit. She was a former preschool teacher, and then she had studied children's literature along the way. And the biggest neatest kind of thing that I thought was she was inspired by Mr. Rogers, Pittsburgh's own. And she used pretty much what screen time would have been. She used television, how Mr. Rogers used television back then to sort of communicate with the kids, back then through the screen, through television, making them feel comfortable and kind of put that into the modern like comparison. It's a little bit different, of course, now with many more devices, but she really used, that inspiration and nonetheless got a job with PBS. Thought that was quite interesting. I also did in her biography, she is married to a military spouse and she has two kids. At that time, in 2017, it was Alexandria, Virginia, is where she was located. But second thing I'd like to hit on was the why I chose this. Being a parent myself, my daughter is in sixth grade, be 12 next week, and how we've had to sort of use technology and the computers in and out, especially during the pandemic, to train and educate and be there a little bit more. I think little bit parents need to be there with them to help them understand what's going on. I mean, when I was growing up, we were with the computer bus. So, but screens now are everywhere. And in education, when COVID had hit, there's a lot of Google Classroom. My wife works at the school. She had to use Google Classroom to, kind of get by. And now here I am, sort of doing the same thing into a screen while we're talking about. So, kind of neat. A lot of comparable things that was of interest. And my wife was a preschool teacher too. And then finding out Sara DeWitt was kind of neat too. But the three fears that she talks about, screen time. The one is that screens are passive and that they make kids sort of lazy. But along the way, what she kind of talks about is how we can put that into use. She used the Wildcrafts show on PBS, and they were emulating what kids were as acting like monkeys. And then they went out like after the screen was off, and you talked about like bats and how bats flew and how they were different from birds. So they were getting a little bit educated through the screen. And early examples of that is it matters how you use those screens. Not all kids are lazy, and you got to learn how to take it away. The games are a waste was the second one, and the Curious George math game was an example. They did some studies on it and gave these kids the math game through the screen with Curious George, and then took a standardized test and then put comparisons with it, and the computer figured it all out, and the predictions of it were that they knew from these screens, this math game, that where these kids were comparable to the chart as a standardized test, and that we can use screens to help educate, maybe reduce testing a little bit. Thought that was unique too. And then the screens are isolating parents from children, and she was really good with that example. Instead of like, oh, here you go, I'm busy, shoving a tablet in somebody's face, to talk about like how we could utilize like, okay, little Johnny has he's saying bat. Oh, and can you rhyme with bat and cat? And she was making examples up like that, like so the parents could interact more with them, letting them know what to do. And it excites the child also. But and to talk with them a little bit more, instead of here you go, have empathy. Like there was a Daniel Tiger episode that they taught about feelings, and that kind of helps out too. Three questions that I would ask. I would ask how much screen time affects a child's vision. Sitting them in front early on, you don't want to have things go bad down the line. Two, how much would this affect social skills, leading to anxiety and mental issues? I mean, if parents really force them the screens, then you might have some issues down the road also. And then what would we do with the extra time instead of testing and focusing on more like social skills at that point? I think would probably be a little bit more at hand in getting kids back together. They were kind of clombered up enough of the pandemic to keep them moving, get the parks going again a little bit more. But I thank you very much for your time, and I hope you have a pleasant day.